First at 9 this Sunday, the 18th of January 2026. Reform rift. More to education reforms than the module controversy, asserts the Prime Minister. Parents stage protest demanding immediate reform implementation. Teachers' unions criticize demonstrations, labelling them government-backed. Several political parties note JVP-NPP clash emerging through the protests. Sensitive subjects. Opposition condemns President's remarks made in Jaffna, warns against stoking the flames of religious and racial disharmony. Hopeful prospects. Nuanced economic outlook for South Asia in 2026, says the World Bank. Robust resilience. Sri Lanka's economy resilient with robust growth in the manufacturing and service sectors, reveals the latest PMI.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on the Derana News channel. I'm Aditya Adrisinghe joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමය forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
Now in your news this evening, education trade unions slammed Prime Minister Dr. Haruni Amarasuri and Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa for making statements contradictory to the Cabinet's decision to postpone education reforms till 2027. Unions also claim that protests raging across the country calling for the implementation of reforms are organized by the governing party.
The Grade 6 English module, part of the government's new education reforms, faced controversy over a reference to an inappropriate website. The cabinet decided to proceed with Grade 1 reforms this year but decided to defer Grade 6 reforms until next year. In response, parents of Grade 6 students staged protests nationwide, demanding immediate implementation. Speaking to media, the demonstrators vowed to initiate a silent protest in front of the Education Ministry at 10 a.m. tomorrow. In the meantime, several parties expressed their views on the matter.
We must assess the sanity of the parents protesting for the implementation of the reforms. It appears that there is an attempt to create division within the education sector through these so-called protests. The opinions they voice make us wonder if they have children at all and if they are married to begin with. Yesterday at a meeting in Kandy, Minister Nalinda Jayatissa, who officially declared the postponement of reforms, stated that despite his announcement, the reforms must be implemented in 2026. Both Minister Aruna Karunatilaka and Minister Jayatissa are members of the same cabinet. After agreeing to a cabinet decision, they make statements on the contrary outside the cabinet meeting. Are these ministers suffering from dementia? Or do they fail to understand the collective responsibility of the cabinet?
මේගොල්ලන්ට කැබිනට් සාමූහික වගකීම තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ.
ආණ්ඩුව තමන්ගේ කණ්ඩායම් යොදවලා
The government has begun organizing protests using their supporters across several areas. The Prime Minister now says they will not back down from implementing the reforms. We keep on saying, show us what you can do. The President posted on Facebook that reforms were postponed for a year due to several issues in the modules. This seems to be a protest against the President staged directly from the NPP headquarters.
ඇතුළෙන්ම කරන මේ කුමන්ත්‍රණයක් උද්ඝෝෂණ.
දැන් මෙතන දේශපාලන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා දෙපැත්තේ.
There is a political issue on either side. The pressure to implement these reforms come from the need to respond to protests organized previously by the opposition. However, protests calling for reform implementation call for the implementation of something that is wrong. We know the government is behind the teams that protest in favor of the reforms. The Prime Minister has also stated that they will not back down from implementing these reforms. So why were they postponed? This seems to be a joke.
මේ විහිළු කතාවක් මේක.
ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන්ම විමසනවා.
We ask, is the Prime Minister not responsible for carrying out cabinet decisions? We are confused because it is the cabinet headed by the President that decided to postpone the education reforms by a year. We see protests calling for the implementation of reforms being held, with some government groups present as well. Perhaps it is the Prime Minister's group that is protesting, since there are essentially two factions in the government, one supporting the President and the other supporting the Prime Minister. We observe that the Prime Minister's statements and these protests are occurring simultaneously.
Now, many opposition parties claim the recent protests are a byproduct of the long-standing conflict between the NPP and the JVP. Meanwhile, MP Devananda Suravira calls for probes to ascertain the identity of the protesters.
Certain protests have been incited demanding the implementation of education reforms. Our inquiries revealed that the protesters were from the NPP, not the JVP. For instance, there was a 19-member protest in Madirigiriya yesterday. None of those 19 protesters were from the JVP. The on-again, off-again conflict between the JVP and the NPP is evident in these protests as well. We have no intention of stopping the education reforms we initiated. Certain parents have taken to the streets demanding the immediate implementation of education reforms in the interest of their children. The president ordered the postponement of reforms. The Prime Minister is inciting protests against the president. The government seems to be divided on this matter. The protests seem to be against the president. The protesters demand immediate implementation. Who is in charge of implementation? Are we? A few hurled mud at the implementation of education reforms. Now teachers and parents have taken to the streets. They demand reforms and transformation. They want the best for their children. Is that not a positive development? The president has acknowledged the mistake. The president's decision to rectify mistakes and implement the reforms next year is quite acceptable. However, attempts of political sabotage carried out by the president's faction, the prime minister's faction, and a faction of someone who vies for the premiership will only destroy the education sector. This is an internal conflict between the JVP and the NPP. Many took to the streets demanding the withdrawal of education reforms. They were rendered speechless when we decided to temporarily postpone reform implementation till next year in a bid to facilitate public discourse. The same people who opposed reforms have now incited protests calling for the reforms to be implemented. That is what we suspect. These suspicions must be investigated. These developments were very similar to the organic fertilizer issue that marred the Gotabaya presidency. Since President Disanayake served in parliament for more than 2 decades, he withdrew the reforms in time. He did so since he is the only government representative with political sense who foresaw the looming public reaction against the government amid protests. I challenge NPP parliamentarians to visit their constituencies. If they do so, they will be violently rejected by their constituents.
Our Prime Minister Dr. Haruni Amarasuriya notes that while public focus largely centres on the controversy surrounding the Grade 6 modules, the government has introduced a series of comprehensive reforms that stretch far beyond the controversy. The Prime Minister made these remarks while speaking at a ceremony in Madurankuliya yesterday.
The groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of Teachers' Hospital at the Puttalam Velasya Government College in Madurankuliya was held yesterday under the patronage of Prime Minister Dr. Haruni Amarasuriya. At the moment, the world is changing rapidly along with ongoing technological progress. Our children will be entering a future shaped by swift transformations in economic systems, employment opportunities and trade relationships. However, we must reflect on whether we have established the right environment to prepare them to face the increasingly challenging world ahead. Through the implementation of education reforms, the government aims to ensure the provision of good quality education for every student. By delivering this quality education, students will be empowered to widen their opportunities and pursue their ambitions and career goals. While significant attention is currently focused on the controversy surrounding the modules, the education reforms introduced by the government extend far beyond the issue at hand. Meanwhile, another forum organised by the National Movement for Education Reforms was held this evening in Anuradhapura. The event saw the attendance of several education-related stakeholders and Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development Vasantha Samarasinghe.
Sajid Premadasa alleged that the government is attempting to introduce obscenity into the school curriculum. The primary reason which led to this statement is the controversy which arose from the use of a particular word in a lesson designed to encourage students to form new friendships. Previously, people formed friendships by exchanging letters, but over time, with the advancement in technology, communication shifted to the internet. Accordingly, people are now able to form new friendships through various social media platforms as well as different websites. Sri Lanka topped the list of nations that search the word sex on Google the most continuously for 10 years. Although India has a population of more than 1.4 billion, it ranked 5th on the list, while Sri Lanka with a population of 22 million ranked first. Education reforms are vital in transforming a society that lacks moral values into a well-developed society. We urge the public to carry out their own research regarding these modules. Any shortcomings related to grammar or language can be corrected. Even the reforms introduced in the past contained significant errors. The public should examine these issues carefully.
Now in other news, Chief Prelate of the Siam Sex Askariya chapter, Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Gnanaratana Thera, emphasizes the need to reflect on challenges facing the nation and Buddhism, urging adults to act with care and wisdom. Speaking at an event in Badula recently, he highlighted the importance of protecting not only Buddhism but also the rights of other religious communities through unity and cooperation.
The distribution of school supplies to 2,025 low-income children in the Badula district was held yesterday at the Mutiyangana Rajamaha Viharaya. The event took place under the patronage of the Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Gnanaratana Thera, Chief Incumbent of the Mutiyangana Rajamaha Viharaya and Chief Prelate of the Siam Sect's Asgiriya chapter.
We must all be concerned over the adversity crippling Buddhism and Sri Lankan citizens. The harm that some intend to inflict on Buddhism and Sri Lankans must also concern us. At the outset, it seems that these plots are an attempt to undermine race, religion, culture and civility. To some, Buddhism has become a headache. I wonder if it has become so to Sri Lankans or to certain foreigners. Nonetheless, what is apparent is that crises they manufacture seek to destroy Buddhism, which has been sheltered very well for so long. Therefore, all adults must approach and confront these challenges with the utmost care and intelligence. Sri Lanka is a multi-ethnic nation with a wide range of religions. Our values can only be protected if all Sri Lankan communities unite.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa strongly rejected the president's claim that certain Buddhists visiting Jaffna passing the Jayasirima Bodhi tree during Poya days do so with the intention of inciting hatred rather than upholding virtue. Speaking to the media, he added that anyone who believes political survival can be secured by fostering social hatred is mistaken.
We heard the president disparage as an act of hate Buddhist pilgrimages to the north going past the Jayasirima Bodhi tree. I completely reject that statement. The Buddhist community in the country worships all Buddhist religious sites sincerely, not with hatred. Similarly, people from the north and the east visit Kataragama and worship Kabilitta with devotion. Therefore, I don't believe that Buddhists or followers of other religions worship any religious site with hatred as their motivation. We should avoid statements that encourage extremism. Suggesting that worship in any district or province is driven by hatred is inaccurate. Avoid statements that encourage extremism. If someone believes they can advance politically by creating divisions in society based on class, race, status or ethnicity, that is a myth.
When the president visited Jaffna, he appeared to focus on winning over people in the north as well as the Tamil diaspora. In doing so, he seems to be overlooking the rights of other communities in the country. He speaks about racism only when visiting the north. What right does the president have to dictate which religious sites Buddhists can visit? Is it prohibited for Buddhists to worship temples in the north, or are they only allowed to visit their local villages' temples? The president has no authority to take such decisions. The president must explain how Buddhists can observe precepts with hatred in their hearts. If the president implies that the Buddhists must be limited to Anuradhapura when observing the precepts, it seems aligned with Prabhakaran's agenda. I consider this is the most treasonous speech ever delivered by a president of this country. The president consciously sought to restrict Buddhists from visiting the north, something even Prabhakaran could not achieve. Buddhists have the right to worship anywhere in the country since they believe in harmony. The addition to worship cannot be disparaged as racism. Furthermore, all communities are united at the moment. Why does the president concern himself where Buddhists observe their precepts in the country? While visiting Jaffna, the president suggested that Buddhists arrive in the north not with harmony in their hearts. We ask him if those statements don't encourage racism.
Welcome back. Now, farmers of the Dehiyattakandiya Mahavali C zone raised concern over the government's failure to disburse compensation for damaged crops following the devastating cyclone Ditwa. Residents of Ranhelgama in Dehiyattakandiya claim that despite numerous efforts to continue crop cultivation, the process remains futile due to the burial of topsoil. Meanwhile, farmers of the Devahandiya village in Ududumbara Divisional Secretariat point out that the deadly landslides which occurred as a result of Cyclone Ditwa have destroyed water channels supplying water to their farmlands. They claimed that the cultivation in at least 100 acres of farmlands remained disrupted as a result. Former Member of Parliament Nandana Gunatilaka passed away this morning at the age of 63. Gunatilaka, who was ill for some time, passed away while receiving treatment at the Ragama Hospital. An early member of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, he contested the 1999 presidential election and came in third with 344,173 votes. He later entered Parliament representing the United People's Freedom Alliance and served as Minister of Tourism and Acting Minister of Posts and Telecommunications. He subsequently left the JVP and joined the United National Party, serving as Mayor of Panadura Municipal Council. His remains will lie at the Panadura Municipal Council from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow for the public to pay their respects, and will then lie in state at the Wadua Buddhist Youth Association Hall from 4 p.m. tomorrow until January 21st. The cremation ceremony is scheduled for 4 p.m. on January 21st at the Wadua Public Stadium. And now here's a look at more local news across the island in brief.
Several former members of Parliament have filed 2 petitions before the Supreme Court challenging the legality of the Parliamentary Pensions Repeal Bill. The petitioners claim that several clauses of the bill presented to Parliament violate fundamental human rights enshrined in the Constitution. In the meantime, a bus travelling from Colombo to Valimadu reportedly overturned in the Uathanna area of Haldumulla. The incident occurred at 7 a.m., leaving 5 people injured and resulting in the death of the bus driver. The injured individuals were admitted to Diyatalava Base Hospital. Meanwhile, fines totaling 950,000 rupees were imposed on owners of 3 private pharmacies by Galgamua, Nikavarati and Pilasta Magistrates Courts. The fines were levied over the violation of regulations issued by the National Medicines Regulatory Authority. Charges were filed against the pharmacy owners for selling medicines without a valid prescription, operating without a valid license and running pharmacies without employing a qualified pharmacist. In other local news, police spokesperson Assistant Superintendent of Police F.U. Wootler shed light on the total amount of narcotics seized in raids carried out last year.
The police seized 1,821 kilograms and 174 grams of heroin in raids conducted last year. Police also seized 17,189 kilograms of cannabis, 3,865 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine and approximately 4 million narcotic pills. We continue to carry out these raids daily this year under the supervision of the Inspector General of Police.
Welcome back. Now in your world news, in your business news, the World Bank's January 2026 Global Economic Prospects Report presents a nuanced economic outlook for South Asia with robust regional growth prospects but more modest expectations for Sri Lanka. According to the latest World Bank data, Sri Lanka's real GDP growth is estimated at 4.6% in 2025, with forecasts of 3.5% in 2026 and 3.1% in 2027. Growth for emerging markets and developing economies in South Asia is estimated at 7.1% in 2025, with forecasts of 6.2% in 2026 and 6.5% in 2027. This positions South Asia as one of the fastest growing regions globally, with growth rates well above the global average and demonstrating resilience despite external headwinds. Within the region, India's growth remains high, forecasts in the 6% range, while Bangladesh and Bhutan also show strong performance with rising GDP figures. Sri Lanka's economy continues to show resilience as the latest Purchasing Managers Index data for December 2025 highlights robust growth in both manufacturing and service sectors. The manufacturing PMI recorded 60.9, indicating continued expansion. Growth was driven by seasonal demand, particularly in the food and beverages sector. Employment and stock of purchasers also rose, although suppliers' delivery times were extended due to weather-related disruptions and increased demand. Meanwhile, the services PMI reached 67.9, reflecting notable expansion in business activities. Wholesale and retail trade, along with accommodation, food and personal services, were key drivers. Employment and new businesses increased, while backlogs of work continued to grow. Looking ahead, expectations remain positive for both sectors, supported by improving economic conditions and seasonal factors. Now, 131,898 tourists have arrived in Sri Lanka as at the 15th of January this year. According to data from the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, the highest number of tourist arrivals for the month of January so far was recorded on the 15th, with 10,483 tourists visiting the country. Additionally, Sri Lanka received a total of 2.3 million tourists in 2025, with Indian travellers accounting for the largest share, according to figures released by the Tourism Authority. India continues to be Sri Lanka's top source market, with 23,786 Indian tourists visiting so far in January, while the Russian Federation trails in second with 14,785 tourists visiting the country. A significant number of tourist arrivals were also recorded from the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Australia and China. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.